A powerful earthquake with an epicenter in Veliaj was estimated by seismologists as a magnitude 5.1 and has shaken up Albania with the strongest tremors felt in Tirana and Durrës as seismic activity continues. Mayor Veliaj has refused the opposition's invitation by letter, explaining that the municipality has already provided all the explanations for the theatre. In turn, the opposition has called a protest in front of the parliament tomorrow. The law prohibiting the use of plastic bags came into power today, with those in violation risking fines from 1 to 1.5 million lek. While traders seem disinterested in the change, consumers are becoming more sensitive to the issue. Good evening, it's 6 o'clock on Wednesday, the 4th of July 2018. Welcome to the English edition of Aura News. My name is Alexandra and I'm here to bring you the day's top stories from across the country translated into English. Earthquakes of a magnitude 5.1 on the Richter scale have shaken Albania today. The main earthquake's epicenter was in Veliaj, about 18 kilometres from Durrës and 30 kilometres northwest of the country. But strong tremors were felt throughout the country and further abroad. In panic, residents left their homes to flee outdoors. From 11:01 in the morning when the first shaking took place until 11:40, the measurements in the seismology sector show that there were another 40 tremors, but at much lower intensities. The earthquake recorded today by our monitoring centre at 11:01 a.m. was located in the Veliaj area with a magnitude of 5.1, said Klosi. Tremors continued throughout the day before the next earthquake with a magnitude of 4.8 was recorded at 1:24 in the afternoon, accompanied by other smaller ones. The earthquake was at a depth of 10 kilometres and is recorded as being 30 kilometres from Tirana. Klosi from the Seismology Department says no predictions can be made, but seismic activity is likely to continue. It has been about 6 years since the last earthquake of 4.2 occurred in the Durrës and Kaneda area. Unfortunately, as this earthquake caused communication lines to fall, it has been particularly difficult. We have no information about damage in this area because we cannot connect with anyone, explained Klosi earlier today. The fact that telecommunication lines were inactive made the situation even worse. The Ministry of Defence and the National Operational Centre at the General Staff said that there had been some material damage, though fortunately no injuries to persons have been recorded. Housing damage has been recorded in the administrative units of Manas, Urshek, Kuruya and more, though mainly the damage reported involves cracks rather than structural damage to the buildings. In the centre of Tirana, a group of emergency services inspected the buildings and according to firefighter Shkëlqim Gojaj, there are minor cracks that have appeared in the National Theatre building. We did an inspection and we saw the real situation. We noticed that the earthquake has resulted in some consequences to the theatre building, said Shkëlqim Gojaj. Albania is not the only country to experience these seismic activities, or a news journalist in Italy, Alba Kepi, reported the same earthquake intensity in the Puglia region. The Independent Qualification Commission has decided on reconfirmation of duty for the current head of the prosecution, Arta Marku. In the previous hearing held yesterday, Provisional Chief Prosecutor Arta Marku was not present, instead being represented by her chosen lawyer, Lirima Čukaj. Yesterday, her non-attendance in the session caused a negative reaction from the IQC troop, as well as representative of the IMO, Teo Jacobs, who considered it a lack of leadership, which obliges one to not only direct, but also take accountability. With regard to the three components, the IQC did not find any problems, despite the fact that the security measure of imprisonment for a person who was caught drunk under the influence of alcohol was considered to be extreme. After the decision, the lawyer, Lirima Čukaj, gave clarification on this issue. The defendant involved in this case was a repeat offender who was driving the car in an inebriated state along Shkodrës Boulevard. The security measure was set by the Court of Shkodra District, and after being confirmed by the Court of Appeal, it was left in power. You should point out to the international expert that the criminal policy has changed. If this fact before the 2016 amendments constituted criminal offence was not sentenced to prison, with new changes being sentenced up to 3 years maximum imprisonment. Regarding the Chief Prosecutor's commands, the lawyer said that there is a consolidated constitutional court ruling. Institutions should continue despite the vacuum that has been created as a result of constitutional reforms and transitional provisions. The Constitutional Court in its decision clearly states that the institutions should continue and must have institutional continuity. With this institutional continuity, it makes its recommendations. The Democratic Party stated that the reconfirmation of Chief Prosecutor Arta Marcu confirms the violation of the public confidence in the vetting process and the collapse of the main pillar of the justice reform. Arta Marcu's reconfirmation for the task as Edi Rama's puppet in charge of the prosecutor's office confirms the violation of public confidence in the vetting process and the collapse of the main pillar of justice reform. We declared yesterday that this is a political decision, not vetting. Arta Marcu should be dismissed for failure to meet the criteria of moral and professional integrity. Arta Marcu should have been discharged from office for at least 5 strong reasons based on unquestionable facts, remarked Enkeled Ali Veliaj. The Democratic Party MP, Enkeled Ali Veliaj, mentioned that the said 5 strong reasons, though his arguments were supported by somewhat unconvincing general statements rather than with factual and specific examples. Number 1, in her 6 months as the head of the prosecution body, Arta Marcu flagrantly violated the law, making illegal appointments and commands of prosecutors, appointing and dismissing prosecutors, along with flagrant violations and her legal powers. Number 2, acting as a political prosecutor, Arta Marcu has violated the law by placing the prosecutor's office under the dependence of the Ministry of Interior and State Police. Number 3, while exercising her duty as a prosecutor, she demanded the imprisonment of citizens outside the criteria predetermined by law. Number 4, she declared illegal construction in violation of the law and without justifying legal sources of funding. And lastly, number 5, incompetence as the prosecutor of Shkodra, she illegally detained a citizen for 2 months and 13 days, freed the freedom unfairly. Ali Veliaj stressed that if the process of vetting were not politically corrupted, Arta Marcu would have been discharged from office today. But that did not happen because the process is run by Edi Rama. Therefore, anyone who serves him in the justice system, who is serving the corruption of his government and organised crime, will pass vetting and will remain in office. Today, at the head of the prosecutor's office is an unprofessional person who has her own merit of loyalty to the Prime Minister and the Minister of Interior, said Enkeled Ali Veliaj. MP Ali Veliaj said that the Democratic Party views the reconfirmation of Arta Marcu in Chief Prosecutor's office as bad news for the vetting process and, as such, the justice reform in its entirety. The Mayor of Tirana has rejected the opposition's invitation to report to the Media Commission regarding the draft law on the theatre that has passed in the Assembly through an accelerated procedure. Veliaj has explained through a letter to the media that he has provided all the relevant explanations in overcoming the opposition's request for his presence in the Commission. The Mayor's participation at the meetings of the Commission is not an obligation. Representatives of the municipality, together with the Ministry of Culture, provided all the relevant explanations requested by MPs and commissions during the review of the draft law on the theatre, it was explained in the letter. After the Mayor's refusal, Albana Vokshi said that Veliaj has chosen to remain silent rather than to stand accountable for the collapse of the theatre. Opposition MPs asked to speak about the theatre in the Production Commission, but the request was refused by the leader, Edward Shalsi. The draft law on the theatre will pass to the plenary session, expected to be approved by a simple majority. Meanwhile, the artists' troupe of representatives and the opposition have announced another protest in front of the Parliament. The unresolved status issue again brought the miners back to protest. In Korça, Durrës and Kukës, as well as other cities, they gathered in front of the prefecture seeking solutions, or otherwise threatening to escalate to a hunger strike. Miners returned to protests in search of their special government status, which, according to them, has been denied of them since 1991. With the calls, "We want the money, we want the status, all the governments have deceived us." They gathered in front of the prefectures in the well-known mining areas. In Korça, where there are about 1,500 former miners, a representation held a meeting with Prefect Doris Vropali, after which they said they would escalate to hunger strike protests if their demands are not taken into account. With the same demands, former miners of Kukës, Memaliaj, Durrës and Mirdita protested as well. Across the country, it is estimated that there are about 3,000 miners seeking to benefit from the status that gives them more rights, including pensions. They have protested several times in the districts and in Tirana, but the issue of the miners' status remains unsolved. 1 to 1.5 million lek is the fine that will be handed down from Wednesday for every subject that imports or produces or sells plastic bags. Environmental Minister Klosi met with inspectors looking for field verifications and penalties against any individual or business that uses and sells plastic bags. The government's decision provides for the use of recyclable bags with a thickness of less than 35 microns, produced with materials that are environmentally friendly. The verification filters of the Ministry of Environment and Taxation Directorate will involve 70 companies that are registered that their activities are used in plastic materials. Despite the considerable fines, the use of plastic bags instead of sacks or bags made of recyclable materials continued in domestic markets. From observations made by Aura News in Tirana, all traders continue to use plastic bags, although citizens are becoming more sensitive to the issue and ready to cooperate to protect the environment. A plastic bag thrown into the environment will take at least 300 years to decompose. For this, environmental experts explain is an indication of how harmful such material is to our ecosystem and nature. And that's the news across the country today. Thank you for watching our English edition this evening, and be sure to join me again every Monday to Saturday at 6 p.m. for the latest news from Albania. Once again, on behalf of Aura News, thank you and good night.